The Nature of Theater, Chapter 1. How and when did theater originate? While we are uncertain as to its exact origins, we believe that it was used for tribal and religious ceremonies, and for storytelling. People would enact the things that they were telling someone else. When did theater receive its distinct identity as we know it today? When we go to the theater, what we see as theater? Well, it was at least 2,500 years ago, in the 5th century BCE. Where? Ancient Greece. Have theater and actors always been respected? No. As a matter of fact, in the 5th through 10th century AD, they were reduced to small bands of traveling performers passing the hat. There were no theater buildings, and actors were not considered respectable people. Was theater ever illegal? Yes. As a matter of fact, in Puritan England from 1642 to 1660, they found it morally unacceptable and said that it tempted people away from, quote, honest work. Why was theater in colonial New England considered lying? This is the United States, colonial New England, before we had declared our independence. They thought theater was lying because the plays were fictional, so they must be lying if it was made up and not the truth. As well as an acceptable form of entertainment, what else did at least some people from all periods believe? That theater was, and is, a truthful reflection of human behavior. What are the three basic elements of the theater? Number one, what is performed? A play, a scenario, a plan. Number two, the performance, the actual performance showing of the play, which is all processes of the production, including costume and lighting and scenery and all that stuff. And number three, the audience, the perceivers, the people who actually receive the production. We're going to break these elements down a little bit. So first, the what. From your text, how does the critic Eric Bentley define theater? Well, he says A performs B for C, where A is the actor, B is the script or the scenario that's being performed, and C is the audience. But the most common definition of what is theater, it's a staged performance of a written text. Are there other types of theater? Yes. They include juggling, acrobatics, improv, pantomime, vaudeville, musical plays, and dramas. More on the what continued. There are two purposes of modern theatrical productions. One is to entertain, and number two is to provoke thought or action about significant issues. John Millington Synge says, "We should not go to the theater as we go to a pharmacy, but as we go to dinner, where the food we need is taken with pleasure and excitement." On the other hand, Peter Brooks says, "The basic function of theater is to be anti-government, anti-establishment, and anti-social." Two very different opinions. The second basic element of the theater is the performance. Performance is defined as a fleshing out of a written text or plan through the application of theatrical processes. The space where it's performed, it could be a theater, a street, a park, or a nightclub. It could seat fewer than 100, or as in ancient Greece, 15 to 20,000. The arrangement. The audience may surround the platform, or may sit in rows facing the platform, or any other audience configuration. More on the performance continued. Who may participate in a performance? Theater is a collaborative art. It takes many talented people to make a show happen. It may include a playwright, directors, actors, designers, and technicians. If you were seeing a musical, that could also include a composer, instrumentalist, singers, choreographer, and dancers. Spectacle includes all stage effects such as costumes, props, scenery, and lighting. The performance continued. Some people may like the performance, while others may hate it. Some find it entertaining, while others find it boring. When we're talking about what is theater, Peter Brooks, from his book The Empty Space, says, "I can take any empty space and call it a bare stage. A man walks across this empty space while someone else is watching him, and that is all that is needed for an act of theater to be engaged." The third basic element of theater, the audience. Theater is not for individuals, as is art or literature, where you are one-on-one with the piece of art to absorb it. Theater is incomplete until an audience receives and experiences it. If an actor is acting alone in his bedroom, it's not a theater experience because there's no audience. The audience is a temporary community. They're kind of all in it together. They all feel the same thing that's going on the stage. The audience gives the performers immediate feedback through applause or laughter or maybe stunned silence. The audience may affect each other. For example, one person laughs, making other people laugh, and the performers, in good ways and in bad. Sometimes the audience might laugh at a place where they're not supposed to laugh, and the performers on stage can feel that. The audience continued. What are motives for people who attend a theater? Why do they go? To be entertained, to challenge accepted values, to raise provocative issues, to advocate action about political or social issues. The audience continued. We're going to talk a little bit about the different types of audiences that attend Broadway theater as opposed to off-Broadway theater, which is still in New York City, it's just not on Broadway. People who attend Broadway, the shows there are very expensive, whereas the off-Broadway shows are less expensive. The Broadway theater appeals to the masses. It's kind of like the general public. They want as many people to come as possible. Whereas the off-Broadway shows, they can take more risks. They can be a little edgy. They can kind of push the limits there. They have that kind of an audience. And for the Broadway theater, they're not too edgy. It's rather mainstream, where the off-Broadway productions can be provocative and interesting. Above all else, theater should entertain. However, when things are presented that we feel should not be put on stage, for example, nudity or sensitive social issues, etc., we may be put off or too offended to be entertained. This chart shows the difference between popular culture and elitist culture. Popular culture are things that are enjoyed by the masses. Most people enjoy these things. Elitist culture, only a few with super sensitivity can appreciate art. Popular culture caters to a broad general public, where elitist culture caters to a smaller group with more demanding standards that the general public doesn't know about. Popular culture, they most likely listen to popular music, where elitist culture, they most likely listen to concert hall music, symphony type stuff. Popular culture, they watch TV sitcoms, where elitist culture, they watch PBS or maybe the BBC. Popular culture, they enjoy and respond to advertising art, things that we see on billboards and in the television, where elitist culture, they appreciate the art that's shown in galleries. Popular culture, the theater they attend are mostly musical comedies, where the elitist culture, the theater they attend are mostly not-for-profit or regional theater, and maybe even experimental type shows. This table is a comparison between the characteristics of theater and football. So, do they pit one side against the other? In theater, yes, there's usually a protagonist and an antagonist. There has to be some sort of conflict for it to be interesting. In football, definitely there are two teams playing against each other. Do they build suspense? In theater, yes, a good show should build suspense so that you are anticipating the ending and excited about it. In football, a good game should have you keeping your fingers crossed for your team and not knowing who will win. Do they reach an outcome, an ending? In theater, yes, the play ends and hopefully all the questions are answered. In football, yes, even if they go into overtime, it finally ends and we have a winner. Do they both have understood conventions? Yes, in theater, we know that it's a place where fictional events occur. In football, their space is a playing field. We understand this. In theater, we have costumes and scenery and all sorts of other kinds of theatrical conventions, where in football they have uniforms and a certain number of players. We understand that. In theater, they could be singing their lines like as in an opera or musical theater. In football, they have rules of the game. We know the touchdowns and the field goals, and they have different points, but they all have conventions that are understood by their audience. So what is art? Well, until the 18th century, it was defined as the systematic application of known principles to achieve some predetermined result. Now this definition is used to refer to the useful arts, medicine, politics, and persuasion, as opposed to fine arts. Which are the fine arts? Well, after the 18th century, it's defined as literature, drama, painting, sculpture, architecture, music, dance, cinema, and photography. Today, when we ask, what is art? Art is one way whereby human beings seek to understand their world. What does Samuel Taylor Coleridge mean when he says that we view a play with a willing suspension of disbelief? Well, we know the events of the play are not real, but we agree for the moment not to disbelieve them. For example, we don't call 911 if we see someone die on stage. We know it's not real. It's also called aesthetic distance. What is empathy? Empathy is the feeling of involvement that allows us to connect to the play and the characters. We feel what they feel. If you've ever cried when you've seen a show or been excited and happy, we're feeling what the characters on stage feel. That's empathy. Theater as art has these special qualities. Lifelikeness. It comes the closest to real life. It holds a mirror up to nature. Ephemerality. As soon as it's experienced, it becomes part of the past. It can never be recaptured exactly the same. Objectivity. We see what characters feel as well as what they do. Many times we see both sides. We know that perhaps it's not so good for that character to get what they want. Complexity of means. Theater uses many things: sound, movement, place, dress, lighting, etc. It draws on all the other arts. Immediacy. The simultaneous presence of live actors and spectators in the same room. The show can never be duplicated exactly the same. This table shows the comparison between theater and film and television. With the theater, they have fewer audience members. Not as many people can actually go and see the theater. With film and TV, they can be seen by millions. With the theater, most of the actors are not well known, again because they don't have as large an audience. Where with film and TV, the actors can be famous. With the theater, audience can see the entire stage. They know what's going on everywhere on stage. With film and TV, the audience sees only what the camera allows them to see. With theater, there's continuous interaction between performer and spectator. Even if they don't look and talk to the audience, the performers on stage can feel the energy between the people that are watching. Whereas in film and TV, there's no interaction at all between the actor and the audience. They don't know if the audience likes them or hates them. In theater, each performance is different. Just like everything in life we do is different. You can't do something exactly the same twice. There's different energy. Sometimes the performers are tired. Sometimes they have, not sleep the night before. Where film and TV, all the performances are the same. It's filmed. It doesn't change. In the theater, the audience must use their imagination. But in film and TV, it shows literal detail. For example, if the play is shot in Paris, then they will actually go to Paris and you'll be under the Eiffel Tower in film and TV, whereas in theater you have to use your imagination and pretend you're there. Of all the arts, theater has the greatest potential humanizing force. It asks us to imaginatively enter into others' lives and see as they see. In a world of violence, being able to understand and feel for others cannot be overestimated. To experience what it means to be human ought to be a primary goal for all. In theater, humanity is its subject and human beings its primary medium. Here's a thought for contemplation. What would your life be like without any art? Now here is a subject near and dear to my heart, arts in education. Many in education think of arts as frills that can be cut and do not see a concrete benefit. What do most parents think when they hear their children say, "Mom and Dad, I want to be an actor, dancer, singer, artist when I grow up"? It's usually not very favorable. But art is very important. How do cuts in art funding affect some learners? Well, there are multiple types of intelligence, and by not teaching the arts, we are not stimulating these types, and therefore some students may not be reaching their full potentials. Arts in education is very important.